So this is part 2. One of our guests is gone, Dr. Ahmed's gone. But we're here with Omajak, Kente and Nigel. Let's get some feedback on the show that just took place, starting with you, Nigel.
I thought it was quite enlightening. It's always good to actually bring up these subject matters because you rarely hear them in general media in terms of a good discussion. And the discussion with black people, you hear these discussions amongst Europeans discussing our politics. So it's good to have black people talking about black issues, about the African continent. So once again, just brilliant to have a radio station that it seems quite progressive in the fact that it's willing to actually air our views and listen to us.
Kente?
Yes, I'll just back up what the brother Nigel was saying, that it was very interesting. We are sure that there's people out there who have never heard this topic being discussed in this type of manner before, this manner. So that in itself was something good. And we just hope the people who are listening will think about what they have heard and even go and do some more research for themselves.
Omajak?
Yeah, I just would like to second that and third, what the brother said before, because normally you don't hear discussions like this. Them try to deal with it now, but them don't really look at the wider history, how things come into being. And I think that's a problem, that our people have to start to deal with the thing on a whole. So it's all good to have these discussions. At least it's not being censored in certain ways.
Okay, Kente, you have something you'd like to share with the public?
In this week's Voice newspaper, there's an article by Dr. Neville Orville Taylor.
Give us the date of the article.
It's this week's Voice.
The date is?
It's from November the 5th, 2006, and the headline is Black Cross or Crescent, the tensions between blacks and Arabs. I don't want to quote out of context. I'm not sure what is the motive behind this, if it's a religious motive, the Black Cross or Crescent. But part of it said that a division between blacks and Arabs, which like suicidal bombers, is threatening to blow up in our faces. The fact is, blacks and Arabs have been on different sides for centuries. It goes on to mention the enslavement of close to 1 million blacks in Africans in Mauritania, and displacement of more than 2 million, and murder of 500,000, and rising in Darfur. And important thing what this article is saying, all of these atrocities are carried out by Arab Islamists, and there are several more conflicts taking place in the continent between blacks and Arabs. And he's saying that the twist of irony is that some members of Islam see the conflict in strict religious terms and totally ignore their racial or ethnic identity. And that's this week's Voice. The Black Cross or Crescent, the tension between blacks and Arabs. So this is him dealing with exactly what we're dealing with today.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. That's very interesting. Nigel, what was your thoughts on that article as Kente read it out?
Clearly, obviously, black people, again, even in their own continent, cannot just live in peace. Once you have outside invaders coming with their religion. Obviously, it is their religion. Islam is an Arab religion. And as I said previously, I have no qualms or grievance against a religion per se. I have qualms and a heavy grievance when they use and sullen a religion, and in doing so they fight, they kill, and they destroy black people. It happened. The Christians did it. Yeah. Once again, I'm not against Christians per se in the terms of its theological writings, but you have a Pope Martin V, who sanctioned pretty much slavery, European slavery of the African continent. You have that again. So what we seem to be going on and on again is about that black people, no matter where they come, always seem to be at the bottom because they take on board in good faith the preachings of others, and they take it on wholeheartedly. I know a few Muslim brothers, and they around now, contemporary Britain, who are wholeheartedly behind Islam. They're behind the faith, to the extent that they out-worship many Pakistanis, they out-worship many Saudi Arabians. Yeah, their belief is in the religion. Their belief is not in the people. And I think this is where black people, once again, are in this flux. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we never seem to have time to think. We're always either defending ourselves or running or fighting. Black people don't have time just to think at the moment.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I mean, you talk about black British Muslims. One of the things I've recognised, and I myself nearly became a Muslim several years ago, but I had a change of mind, change of heart. But one of the reasons that when we were young people, why we were going to join Islam, was because we said, oh well, our parents brought us up under Christianity. We looked at the history of Christianity. We said, no, these people enslaved us. They actually enslaved us and gave us the religion. We had no choice as to whether or not we took on that religion. That wasn't always true in the Caribbean. For example, in Jamaica, Christianity came in via African Americans who were paid as missionaries to bring Christianity into Jamaica. So there's different histories as to how the religion got into the Caribbean. But we know the overall effect that has had on the psyche, the African psyche, the black psyche. So looking at this history, we said, nope, we're going to look at Islam, because at that time the Nation of Islam was very prominent in the community. And I had access to a lot of Farrakhan videos, and it blew my mind with some of the things he was saying. And of course, hip-hop was rising at the time. I was about 16, 17. Hip-hop was massive, and a lot of the artists themselves, just like some reggae artists would use Rasta, the hip-hop artists were using Islam. So we kind of thought, yeah, this is it, we have landed, we're home. And of course you had films like Roots, which kind of even pushed that message even further, that the majority of Africans who came to the West, so they say, were Muslims, even though we know that's not quite true. So these are some of the things that we were going through when we were younger people, and so we decided to take on Islam. I was lucky, if I can use that word, in the sense that I had other people around me who were able to show me the history even further, take it beyond Christianity, take it beyond Islam, and say, well, actually, have you looked at this? Other friends refused to go down that road, and they took on Islam, changed their names to Arab names. They stopped wearing their clothing, Western clothing. They started wearing Arab clothing, grew the beards. A lot of the sisters I knew, I felt they became disempowered. They now had to ask permission. Simple things like to go to the shop. They had to ask their husband permission. Can I leave the house and go to the shop? Whereas before we would just go to the shop. The dynamics changed so much, and a lot of our friendships destroyed as a result. But I'm using this to illustrate the fact that a lot of blacks in the West who take on Islam do so because they're running away from Christianity. But what they're doing, I feel, they're ignoring the true relationship between Africa and Islam. And they're ignoring how Islam got into Africa. They're ignoring how many Africans got Islam. They're ignoring the devastation, the cultural devastation that Islam has reaped upon Africa. Kente?
There's a more serious issue in that after leaving Christianity, based upon the history of Christianity towards African people, then embrace Islam, feeling that they're going to do something that have treated African people in a better way. When they realize that Islam treated Africans in a similar way to Christianity treated Africans, they then close their eyes to that reality. After leaving from one to the other, you find that many of them become trapped, and they close their eyes to reality and don't want to deal. That is why issues like in Sudan, they can't deal with this kind of issue, because to deal with this issue is showing them a reality that they don't want to face. And they become trapped, and it's even dangerous in many ways, that kind of thinking, where you become so trapped that you can't accept what is in front of your very eyes.
Jack, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, as the brother, Muhammad was saying earlier, you were saying that they just want to live. Now, speaking to the brother, I said, oh, did you...
You mean speaking after the show?
After the show, the show. I asked him, what is the education system like in Sudan? I said, did you know about the Far people, which I think he said he's from? I said, did you learn about them before? And he said, no, they only teach you the history when the Arabs arrived in Sudan. So that shows you that when you're teaching somebody like that, you can actually abuse them because they don't know what went before.
Yeah.
So the continuous process can continue because you cut their mind off in that way.
But you need to understand also that part of that is also that many of the Africans being told that their ancestors were pagan don't want to hear anything about that past, because that past brings shame to them in their eyes.
Yeah.
That's part of the whole thing.
I mean, so you can actually see the stance of religions, all these one God religions, then if you want to call it, because religion is only a deification of a people's culture. So when you in your book said God point to your people who received it first, then you is going to be the one who's going to disperse it. So you've got like a divinity to disperse that religion. So even
people,
that's right,
complex.
in a way. So people, even I know from Sudan, who said yes, we've been under Islam, they're saying yeah, we look down on the other ones because we had it before them. So you can see a process taking place. And like Brother Kente was saying earlier, sometimes we may say, oh, we just want to get along with them, but we don't really want to look at the history and say what has been the relationship between us.
Why? Because it's not the same process we've gone through in the Caribbean. You go home sometimes, you have some information and knowledge, and you begin to share certain things to some of your parents, and it's like a wall, absolute wall with some of them. You just cannot get through.
You've got a person who's 60, 70, 75. You're then going and attacking their whole being. You're attacking their history in terms of their personal history, their personal understanding of their environment and the wider environment. So if you're saying to a black person, Christianity wasn't initially your religion, they're like, no, of course it's my religion.
Yeah.
If you're saying that you had your own indigenous religion in Africa, that you worshipped your own deities, that you believed in a single God, because let's not act as if Africans were practicing some hell-raising madness. These are formed religious beliefs. They weren't just a man grabbing a spear and jumping up 2 times to some drum. I think this is the image that is portrayed on BBC 2 documentary or Channel 4 documentary. And then along with this, you have the continual indoctrination of black people, black old people, black young people, black middle-aged people, that before the arrival of the Europeans with Christianity, we were nothing. So we were empty vessel, and they filled us up. They educated us. They civilized us. And a lot of us haven't gone past that point, that our vessel was pretty much near to the top before the Europeans arrived. Our glass was more than half full.
Yeah, man. Abundance galore.
A brother told me, this brother will be about 42, early 40s anyway. He told me that he was glad for slavery. I'm not talking about someone 70 or 80 or 90, which you would expect. He said he was glad for slavery because if it wasn't for slavery, he would not be a Christian.
I've heard that, yeah.
And that's a young brother.
I've heard old people say that.
But this is also, this whole idea, that very same sentiment was kind of pushed on that program the other day that was on BBC 2, Shoot the Messenger. They had those kind of sentiments coming across that, look, stop complaining. If it hadn't been for Christianity, you'd be running around naked and things like that. But again, it's all about you see what's happened to the African, I kind of feel, is this dehumanization process that's taken place. And I think Amos Wilson, on the DVD Blueprint for Black Power, I think he really kind of deals with that whole issue very well. And what he talks about is the psyche of the African being replaced. So some Africans have a European consciousness placed inside of them. Some Africans have an Arab consciousness placed inside of them. So when you try to dialogue with them about their history, you might as well be talking to an Arab or a European person. It doesn't matter that their skin is black. Their consciousness is gone. How do we begin to put an African consciousness, so to speak, back into our people? And I'm not saying that they have to get rid of Islam, they have to get rid of Christianity or anything like that. I think people have a right to choose what religions they want to. But how do we use these religions to our benefit?
But you see, what you're talking about now is that the African culture being devalued.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people in Senegal, and they are Muslims. And
you've travelled widely to Senegal.
Yeah, I've been to East Africa and West Africa. I've known people who are Muslims and they practice African culture. I know I said to them, is that thing what you're doing, is that thing African culture? Is that Muslim culture? Are you supposed to do that thing with the milk? They said no, but it is our African culture. So in a way, you kind of a schizophrenic mentality.
Yeah, and a schizophrenic.
You're drawn to your ancestors' ways of being that has kept you and keep you going, and your outlook on the world. And now you've embraced something because what you're supposed to follow, so-called many gods, if not many gods, is less than one God in all mind. What kind of outlook and philosophy you got? So when you're dealing with those kind of things, an African who is a Christian, an African who is a Muslim, can he embrace Africa for what he thinks or she thinks Africa is? When Africa is being portrayed as people making so-called sacrifices, killing each other, doing savagery, uncivilized, can they embrace that mentally? Because that's what's kind of cut them away and say, yeah, I'm in something good now.
Okay, Nigel?
It's just basically we need to develop an African ideology, an African concept. What we have is a lot of politics going on in Africa, but the politics aren't indigenous to Africa. In the 80s, in the 70s, the 60s, you had African communism. Communism is a European ideology, but yet still you've got black people fighting against black people over communism. It's a European ideology.
Yeah.
You got black people fighting over Islam. It's an Arabic religion. Yeah. You got black people fighting over every
other than Africanism.
Exactly. Yeah. Why don't we? And the problem is there's a void. We have a void. We have a knowledge void. Yeah. And unfortunately, this knowledge void seems to be getting larger. It isn't getting smaller. It's getting bigger because a lot of contemporary people in Britain, young people in Britain, don't seem to be passionate about finding and filling this void with knowledge and understanding of their history, of their culture. Yeah, they're taking on other people's culture. This isn't my culture. Britain is where I live, but it's not my culture. Yeah. And it's difficult for young people because you have children obviously brought up in the educational system and all they're fed is MTV base and ITV Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and all this. Yeah. And if that's your education, you're going to be soaked up into contemporary British society, and then you think to yourself, this society describes who I am. I'm therefore British. But this is not. Yeah, you have to start to move outside this and realize you are a different entity. Yeah, we're not saying we're better or worse than you, but we are different, and it's time to fill that void. It's time to fill that knowledge. And when you go to Africa and you say tell me about your African history, colonialism has taken their understanding of their own history. They have no understanding of their own wealth, their own beauty, their own magnificence, because that colonialist power has taken it, and before that slavery power has taken it, and even before that you had the Arabs taking it as well. So it's time to actually do some serious research, right, about our past in order to empower our future, to give us the concepts, the African concepts that are ingrained in us.
Kente, how do you think we can fill that void? Nigel is talking about the cultural void, a knowledge void. How do we begin to repair? How do we begin to fill that void? How do we begin to, and it may be a strange concept for some people listening to this to grasp, how do we begin to rehumanize ourselves?
Well, that's a very big question. If we look at the things that are against us, for example, the mechanism of those who are against us, they have got BBC, CNN, Fox News. They've got 24-hour per day media. They've got millions of volumes of books, thousands of networks, media networks, and billions and trillions of dollars.
And institutions.
And
the biggest military army
everything,
that the world has ever seen.
Now, what have we got? How can we compete against that force?
But do we have to compete? Is it about competing against Africa?
I mean, how can we begin to challenge that force that is reigning against us?
But haven't we challenged it through things like Rasta, Pan-Africanism, and these some of the things that we've used to challenge.
Can I say, I think we've challenged it by simply surviving. But
it's survival.
No, just challenge it by simply surviving.
Yeah.
How many millions were just taken and killed? Yeah. How many tens of millions were starved?
Yeah.
And yet still black people are still here, and we're still talking, and we're still thinking, and we're still fighting.
But what's the point if you're just walking dead? What's the point of existing if you're just a walking zombie?
No, the point is for your children, it's for your next generation. I'm not doing this for me right here, because in 50 years I won't be here, and my situation may not have changed dramatically. It may have changed just slightly, but because my situation has changed slightly, my offspring hopefully will be in a better position to carry this forward. It's not a little thing. It's not a thing that's going to be done overnight. It can't be. It took so many hundreds of years to put us in this position. It's going to take us a long time to take us out of this position. But we have to start with the solid foundations.
But this is what Kente is saying. You're dealing with people who have very solid foundations, in the sense that while we've been battered, while we've been asleep, they've been able to build and build and build and create. How do you now begin to challenge these very institutions, these ideologies, for the heart and soul, for the minds of your people?
Even more so, how can the 1%, if that much among African people who is even half awake, how can that 1% influence that 99% without any type of resource apart from the knowledge that they've got? Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just laying down how serious the situation is. So when the question is asked, how can we do this, we have to bear in mind that maybe today we can't do much today.
Our question now, just have to say 2 words: Marcus Garvey.
But then, wasn't that a different environment? And be more complacent in these times. When Marcus Garvey was around, you had the communists, the Marxists, whatever. You had the Ku Klux Klan. You had so much. There was a global movement of Africans to try and free themselves from European and Arab oppression. The picture is very much different today. We're very comfortable living in the West, some of us.
I don't want to sound defeatist, and I'm just saying that maybe we should first think of what we'd want to achieve in this first stage. What is it we want to achieve? Well, as far as
what was it you would want to see Africans achieve?
As far as I'm concerned, all we can do is wake up. I don't see what else we can do at this moment other than wake up.
So for you, it's about the mind.
It's about the mind. That's all we can do at this moment.
For the first stage.
I mean, when you're dealing with this thing now, you're dealing about positioning yourself to influence the globe. The West through America has different media systems to influence some parts of American culture globally. The Chinese has recognized this, and they've got their own systems to push to their own population what the Chinese psyche or consciousness is supposed to be. Now, I think with these modern technologies that we got now, we can utilize them. There's already internet, African TV. There's medias that we can use. It's just for our people to stop.
TV base?
Not quite. I mean, African conscious media. No, not those kind of those.
Yeah.
You know, I've been looking at some of these, and them actually speaking to each other now through like LIB radio as well, broadcasting globally.
And that's something that people should check out, isn't it?
Exactly.
www.lib.com.
Radio,
We're not supposed to be advertising other radio stations, but check it out. These guys are serious on the internet. Very serious.
So what I'm saying, these things are already in existence. It's for us to know. Link into these things to put our voice out in the public, because what you're not hearing is the African point of view. The few Africans that you do see them wheel out, them is most like the begging ones, them begging, why don't you do this for us? Why you see the Al Sharpton types begging. You know, we don't have no upright, proud people standing up. I mean, Farrakhan talk up to a degree, but I don't know what direction he's
he made it clear. I heard him in a speech saying he would love to see the Islamization of Black America, that would be his goal.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay. Again, it's one of those things where I kind of think sometimes, I mean, I have my own spiritual beliefs, but I don't believe that all black people should have to adopt that. I think it's about us with our different religions, different beliefs and practices, coming up with some kind of a value system that we could all agree to, and then, you know, try and move things from there.
When you're dealing with spiritual systems or so-called religions, I mean, all these things are supposed to do in the first place is to modernize your behavior, that you behave well and treat your other fellow human being with respect, and you live in balance throughout the universe and the wider, you know, reality that we know. That's what it's supposed to be. But we know as a human being sometimes are governed by other things. Just like the invasion into Africa, it is silent. Nobody's speaking about it. The brother from Sudan doesn't even know his own history. It just shows you what's going on. That's why we need a media system that is speaking to our consciousness, and that we can, you know, actually give something to the world as well. The African is not giving anything to the world. The things that African is producing is being just taken, and we're not in control of it.
And this is one of the things where I was saying to Dr. Ahmed, you know, you can talk about the United Nations, but when do we as black men and women, when do we get up and say, this is who we are as human beings, this is how we demand to be treated, and anybody who doesn't treat us in the way that we demand to be treated will face penalties. You'll have penalties for mistreating us. And that is what Garvey was about. Garvey was saying, look, let's build up a place in Africa somewhere. If they trouble one of us in America, we deal with them on the continent. He was thinking very globally. That is how Europeans operate. If you trouble a British person in Kenya, or for example even in Zimbabwe, there's trouble, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just kind of wish we would sometimes move away from these international agencies. Not to say that we shouldn't use them, but that we should really fall back on ourselves first and defend our own humanity.
We're from the African family. We have to see family first. This is our bloodline. This is us. So I'm saying you're going to put religion before that. But when they put religion before that and them start getting the heat, then them in confusion, because them can't see themselves anywhere, because they've taken up a particular stance.
I just want to pick up on your point about organisations, Western organisation. I just look at the statistics where you have 2.5 million people displaced. You've got 5 million people a month dying in Darfur. I'm just thinking about...
How many people dying a month?
5,000.
Okay.
Sorry, 5,000 people dying a month in Sudan, Darfur. I want any agency who's going to help to stop that one person dying, those two people dying, that child dying. I want every agency. So if that means I have to go to the UN and say, look, pull your socks up, you're getting paid, because we don't get this wrong, every country contributes. It's not like we're going there begging the money. We contribute to the upkeep of the UN. Yeah, if you pay into something, it's like an insurance. If you pay into something, if something bad happened, you want a payment out of it. Yeah, we're not begging. This is part of what we paid into. I clearly understand your point. Sudan is in the African continent, hopefully, and we should be able to sort it out ourselves. But we're not. We're not sorting it out. 7,000. We can muster 7,000 troops from all African nations. 7,000. That's pitiful. So basically, they're not doing their jobs. Yeah, these are people's lives. These are children's lives. So any organisation that's going to stop this genocide, yeah, I'm going to be calling for them to take their full responsibility and go in there.
Both is right. It's all about expectations. If you're going to put the trust in the United Nations, and you're going to suffer. We know there's things I can do, but we also know there's things that we have to do on our own. So there's no reason why the two can't work hand in hand, as long as we know the situation. In terms of what we need to do today, basically our people are the way we are due to ignorance. Our enemies spend a lot of resources to maintain us in that ignorance. So logic tells us when our people become aware of what they should be aware of, then everything would fit into place. It's just logic. So the thing we can do today is to enlighten our people.
this enlightenment has been happening for a long time. It's not just a recent thing. From the 60s, the 70s, the 20s. I mean, the information has been there. There's always been a number of Africans who are aware, who are seeking knowledge, who are seeking information, who are writing books, who are making documentaries, trying to explain to people what's happening.
Yeah, but that's why I mentioned the ads. Other people who spread information, I've got thousands of people spreading it. Now we have a few people who are doing the same thing that they are doing. So obviously, the few of us who are spreading the correct information is far outweighed by those who are against us. We don't have no media, for example. There's not one media
organization
we have in the world equivalent to the BBC that spread European propaganda, right? There's no school I know of in Africa that have an African curriculum. Not one. Now, if we are faced with people who have thousands of institutions spreading their worldview, and we don't have one in our country doing the same thing, that's what we are up against. It's not being defeatist, but it's just facing the reality. You see, this information I've never yet, apart from the time of Marcus Garvey, it has never yet reached the masses of people. In Africa, for example, it's almost certain that 98% of Africans have not heard anything. These books we're reading in the West, they have never heard of those books.
Yeah, definitely.
What we take for granted, they have never heard of anything like that. So how do we reach the people in the village and the continent, as an example? What means do we use to reach the people in the village? It's no point going to universities and the continent and lecturing and holding a meeting with the so-called educated people. What about the grassroots? How do we reach the grassroots of people and the continent, for example?
Maybe we need some African aid organizations like you have Christian Aid and
of course.
Is it Red Cross?
Red Crescent.
Yeah,
Red Crescent.
Red Crescent. And I'm sure they have Red Cross as well. These kind of organizations, and you kind of go in there and say, we've brought you some food, but we've also brought you, and then you start the process from there.
I know them have missions that I've seen in Africa. The Libyan mission, the Saudi mission. These missions go in, them say we want to build a school. When we build the school, you're going to push your Arabism through the school. Or you want to educate your children, fine, but you have to build a mosque next side of it.
The sad thing about it is when talking to African Muslims and even reading some of the literature that's out there, they're so dismissive of the whole, if you talk to them about the Arab enslavement of Africans, they're very dismissive of it. If you talk about Arab propaganda in Africa, they dismiss it. They say, you just come with your Western propaganda. You don't understand what's going on. The West is jealous because of the rise and growth of Islam. Therefore, they're seeking to destroy Islam. We haven't got anything as Muslims to worry about.
The brother just tell you earlier. Him say when you go to him school and him learning, them didn't learn anything about them before Islam. So the brother is telling you that. So when them speaking to you like that, they are saying that what was before is no value. So them just taking Islam as them find it. But them choose not to look at the history of Islam, because the Arabs not telling you how them invade Africa. But there is chronicles of their destruction by them own people. They've written it, or them invade across North Africa.
Yeah, people seem to think that the Arabs came to Africa as friends. Maybe in some camels and just rode across. And no, it's a bloody invasion. And most of us don't want to face up to that fact.
But some people even say that the Arabs are not even a race. When you talk about Arab, you're talking about
a traveler.
Linguistics. It's nothing to do with race.
Yeah,
therefore, you can find Africans who are Arabs living in Saudi and living in North Africa.
According to the Arab League, the definition of an Arab is someone who speaks Arabic or an Arab country. That's the definition of Arab.
Yeah.
One who speaks Arabic or an Arab country. That's the definition by the Arab League of an Arab. But you see, these words are very beautiful. But we know that when they come to look slaves, they come for the ones who look like us.
Black.
So all those beautiful words about brotherhood is meaningless. When they come to oppress and look slaves, we're the ones who end up being taken out.
And this is why I was saying on the first part of this show, why don't we seem to check out people's credentials before we allow them to come in fully amongst us? You know, if you go to a shop and they say, oh, you know, you just don't go and buy a CD player. Well, I don't anyway. I put some CDs in, I test it, I see if it works. I have a good mess around, a good play around with it. Now, if other people are going to come amongst us and want to bring us new religions and want to live next to us and want to trade with us, there must be some process of checking out people's credentials. And I find that Africans, whether Muslim, whether Christian, or even traditional Africans, I just find there's something immature about the way we relate to other people. Some people may say, no, it's just our nature, we're just kind and we're just loving, we can't help it. But when I say immature, I mean, once we begin to see how people react to us, we don't seem to get the teeth out and get the claws out and just deal with it. It's this softy way of, this humanistic way of dealing with things, and it just doesn't work. We're dying, man.
Hakim Matabuta wrote a book, an excellent book, a thoroughly brilliant book called The Clash of Nations. In this book, he discusses man and the being of man, and he relates it in this form. You got the concept of a canine. A canine is a dog, but within that family of canines, you have a German Shepherd dog, and his nature is aggressive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but within that family of canines, you have a Chihuahua, and his nature is more of a genteel nature.
Yeah.
Within humanity, yeah, you have the Europeans who have been aggressive from their birth. Their environment made them aggressive. Their environment made them barbaric. Their environment caused them to kill without conscience. Yeah. The African, being in an environment which allowed thought, which allowed communities to grow and to develop and to flourish. His nature is one more of a family orientated unit, of a thought, of a conscious, more positive unit. Yeah? And therefore when he comes across a person, a strange group, tribe, whoever from Europe, their nature initially is one, okay, you must be as civilized as I am. And obviously this thought, this understanding was way off. And they paid the price, and they continue to pay the price. But it's our nature. When you say it's a naive nature, I understand your point, but I also say we are different, and I do not want to be as barbaric.
I want to do whatever it takes to keep me on the planet.
To survive.
Whatever it takes. I have no issue with that. It's relative. Mm-hmm. It's just relative.
There's a difference between killing and defending. I have no issue with defending.
Well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about defending.
We need to attack as well.
We need to attack.
We're just bringing our debasing ourselves to their level.
What level? Whose level?
You're telling me you want to take.
You can't tell me that Africa. We have to get away from this idealism that Africans have never killed. Africans, it was all wonderful in Africa until the European man and Arab man came along, and goddamn, they just wreaked havoc on us. We have to get away from that, and we have to stop pretending that we didn't kill each other. We didn't have wars with each other. It's in our nature. We just need to know when to use it appropriately.
Name a nation, an African nation, an African government that has systematically introduced a program to kill 5 million of another culture.
Hold on, you mean present African or historical African nation?
Historical African, 5 million.
No, we don't have any.
No, because it's barbaric.
But you have to remember, sometime, we Africans amongst our own self, we hold grudges with the other group over there.
Yeah.
Now, when these foreigners come in, them is the ones who wreak mass havoc amongst our people, displace us. Until now, you even hear the brothers say, oh, the Arabs have been there from when? A few hundred years they've been there. I know people, they originate in Mauritania. The Arabs run them out of Mauritania. They say they are Muslims also. But the brother saying, I said, well, why would they run you out if they see Muslims like you? But yet, some of them hold grief against their own kind and can't see the real enemy of our people. They've only been there a few hundred years.
You go, for example,
and they're expelling Africans out of that country.
You even bring it closer to home, for example. You go to somewhere like Jamaica and you see the amount of murders that happens in Jamaica per year. It's so sad. Yet the very people who have created the Jamaica that we have today, who force our people to live in a horrid existence, who exploit Jamaica, you will never see those people troubled on any level.
A good example is in Rwanda, where it was said by the Watutu that the Watutsi collaborated with the Belgians. But surprise, surprise, the Watutsi didn't exterminate the Belgians. Sorry, the Watutu did not exterminate the Belgians. They exterminated their own brother. So if they can feel that anger towards their own brother, why can't they feel that anger towards Europeans or Arabs?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't so much agree that we are so loving, because we're certainly not loving among each other. And even when the Europeans came there, we were there fighting each other. If we weren't fighting each other, they couldn't get any success in Africa. They were using one group against the next group. Then they come there and find us living in peace. We were fighting against each other in many occasions. So they use one group against the next. So if things were so peaceful, they would not have been able to gain the success they gain in Africa. And that's the reality.
Do you sometimes, or do you perhaps think that we have a fear, that we're afraid? Are we fearful? Are we waiting for some guy to come from the clouds and say, I'm here, there's a second coming, I've come to save you all and take you out of this madness?
You mean fearful to use against outsiders? Because
that's it.
If we take the Nigerian situation, was it Biafra War? And that was a genocide in Nigeria. So we don't show any qualms about killing each other. Now some will say that situation was caused by the European divide and rule, etc., etc. But the point is that when it comes to killing each other, we have not shown any reservation about killing each other. But when it comes to killing other people, we don't seem to show the same vigor and eager.
When you say that the Europeans come in and was fighting each other, it wasn't really so it was fighting each other in that sense. I mean, they came in to seek division in order to get control. But you're right in the sense that our attitudes toward ourselves, we seem to can disregard it. But to the foreigner, there's some psychological thing there, and I think we have to overcome. When we overcome that, this is going to be part of the journey in us getting respect in the rest of the world. Because as just listening to the conversation, you make me think of Nelson Mandela. No, them put up Nelson Mandela. I know some may not like it, but them put up Nelson Mandela as an arbiter of peace. When you look at the situation in Azania, or we know it as South Africa, they killed thousands upon thousands of African people. Very few whites died. So when we can turn around a situation like that, white life is valuable, African life is not. So we see on TV Africans dying, and right now it means nothing to us. Them put on a show about Jesus back in when them crucify him, you get people crying. But you see the African child there, and some of us have been desensitized to it.
I think there's a valid point when you're talking about Azania, South Africa, just thinking about the Truth Commission and how that was built up. Okay, we're going to get to the crux of what happened about apartheid, and the message was one of forgiveness. But I was thinking maybe the focus should be one of rebalance. It should be a court where people are brought to a place and they're punished for their crimes. As you point out, a place of justice rather than just airing what I did. I didn't see the point of that. Children were killed. They knew what happened. They might not know exactly the man or the time, but they definitely know where their graves are, their children's graves are. And to me, that was a point where you could say, all right, we're going to bring these people to justice and find out who they were and lock them up. If you got proper punishment, do what you got to do. Once again, as you point out, you seem that we're kind of fearful. We're kind of fearful in delivering justice to a person who's non-black.
I must give credit where credit is due. I believe in Rwanda, they're attempting a serious reconciliation between the people, Africans in Rwanda. I believe that is a serious attempt not to repeat the violence that have taken place in the past. Right now in Rwanda, I think that is taking place. And recall that in Rwanda, despite the atrocities committed against the Watutsi have not really retaliated, even though they're against the next group. So must also bear that in mind.
Do you think sometimes that the religions we actually adopt and take on, that they actually prevent us from being able to defend ourselves and defend our lives and defend our culture and our own interest?
Yes. And yes and no. A next case, for example, I know it's an isolated case, but the Zanzibar Revolution was one of the few times where African Muslims rose up against the Arab oppressors in Zanzibar. And even that revolution have been reversed in many ways, but it shows that it can be done. And of course, most of the leaders of the colonial struggles in Africa were Christians. We must not forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And Christianity have not stopped Africans from fighting Europeans to gain independence, militarily as well as politically.
Okay.
So must always bear that in mind.
Okay. If the present situation in East Africa, in Sudan, in Mauritania, as you were saying earlier, Niger, and even in some parts of Mali, I hear, if the present relationships continue between Africans and Arabs, where Arabs are dominating and exploiting and murdering Africans, and if our relationship over here in the West and in Africa too continues, our relationship with Europeans, which is always and has been ever since they've colonized and enslaved us, it's always been a relationship of master and servant. If these relationships continue, what is the future for Africans on this planet?
But there's even bigger.
When I say Africans people, I mean black people, alright?
But it's even worse than that. Because we have the Africans in Indonesia on the same condition. We've got the Africans in India under the same conditions, as well as the Africans in China. So it's a universal problem that we face. Of course, many of us cannot even deal with the issue of the Europeans. So to then come to the realization that it's not just the Europeans, it's also the Arabs, the Chinese, the Indians. It's a big, big thing. Which is why many of us prefer not to deal with it and close our eyes to the reality. And who can blame us sometimes? Seeing this big... I remember we've got a brother in Tanzania. Once he was speaking to a man, and he was speaking about Rome and Mecca, i.e. Islam and Christianity, that he's challenging it. And the Tanzanian brother, he scratched his head and he said, you one man is going to take on Rome and Mecca. The idea of one man who can even challenge Rome and Mecca, it's just a different concept. You couldn't understand, you can be so, don't even foolish or brave.
So what, you talking about an intellectual or the physical challenge?
Intellectually. It's just that it's pinpointing the enemies we have. Rome and Mecca. Right? The point I'm making, most of us can't deal with one oppressor.
Let alone two,
1, 3, and 4. So rather than come to that confrontation, rather ignore rather just be right in the sun. And it's a big struggle, it's a big issue that we need to deal with, which most of us are not even come to terms with. We're just struggling on this small level, but it's a big, big picture.
And if we don't deal with it, the reality is that we're coming off this planet.
Yeah, if we can't, that's the reality. I mean, what future have we got if things continue the way they're continuing? Our great ancestor told us that we won't stand up until our back is against the wall, but I don't know how further our back can be against the wall.
Nigel, you wanted to say something?
Kenta was mentioning Mecca and Rome. The gentleman should just simply have said, well, it was the Ethiopian architects who rebuilt Mecca. And Rome pretty much was a little village, while Ethiopia and Sudan and Nubia and Egypt were great and huge and powerful and beautiful. And I hear what we're saying today about our situation right now, but it's like a circle. We were on top for thousands of years. We were at the apex of knowledge, of understanding, of technology, of culture. And we're at the bottom, but it's like a circle. We can turn it back where we are on top. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. I haven't got my head in the clouds. You know what I mean? I'm a realist. I can live in contemporary Britain. Right now, we're at the bottom. And anybody that says we're not at the bottom is just, you know what I mean, walking with their eyes closed. But once again, we can't give up hope. And I'm not going to give up hope. We will continue to fight. We will continue to educate. We will continue to make sure that our families are provided for. We will continue to make sure that we have independent economical power. And I think we haven't mentioned that economic power. Money rules at the moment. Yeah, all right, we live in a society that's pretty much based on a white supremacy. But once again, money has its place. We're not we need to be focusing on developing an economical base where we can say, okay, we can afford to do our thing. We can afford to go in this direction because it benefits us as Africans. And until that point where we can have that independent economical power, we're going to struggle. So we need to be thinking on not just a mental and a theory base. We need to be financially making strides forward, because that is one of the main stumbling blocks right now. We just don't have our economic independence.
It's kind of like a package, isn't it? I mean, you get a package holiday. You know, for us, I guess it's the economics, it's the family, it's the education. It's the reconceptualization of who we are. It's knowing what our purpose is on this planet as a people. It's so many things. Jack, you sat there quiet, thinking, looking very
just
meditative.
Listen to all of that. Like the brother just mentioned the economics. I mean, everything have to be worked out at the same time. You can't separate one from the other. It is the philosophy or the way you view the world that is going to help you through the world. So economics is part of that. Education is how you actually put the information to the young people, to yourselves, or you view the world. That's how you're going to survive. Right now we're under different people's systems. We have to go and endeavor to create our own. The brother point out, say we are the great countries, Nubia, Ethiopia, and they even built Mecca and Rome. These places we have are no more. So it's now we have to be putting on the base thought and ideas. Are we going to get that control back in our life? We have to go and read books written by our people, for our people, dealing with all levels of living. Then we can look at others. We can look at the Greeks, we can look at the Arabs, we can look at all the other rest of humanity, and we can decide whether it's any good for us or bad for us. But first we have to learn our own understanding of the universe, and then we can even contribute to humanity also.
I would just say that in terms of economics, you see, unconscious people cannot build any kind of economics. You see, the liberation of the mind is very important. I know it's sometimes like a chicken and egg situation, but people don't just come together and create economics. There must be a conscious decision to do that. There must be some basis for that coming together. And if we have a situation where our people would rather to buy from someone else when I buy from the moon, with that type of mentality, how could we even build any kind of, how can we build an economy based on that kind of mentality? Anywhere we are in the world, we find other people controlling our communities. You go to East Africa, it's Indians. You go to West Africa, you find Arabs. You go to USA, you find everyone, Koreans and everyone else. So obviously, the fact that one Korean can come in among tens of thousands of Africans and open a supermarket, and all those Africans together couldn't open a supermarket, it just showed that it's all about consciousness. Surely one Korean is not more powerful than thousands of Africans. So it's all about consciousness. And as long as we are unconscious, there's no hope. And others know it, because the same Korean, knowing that we're unconscious, know they can come in and open a store and we go and buy from him. They know we're unconscious more than we even know. So as long as we remain the way we are, our economic base is a talk at the moment.
But this is one of the things, isn't it? And sometimes you hear in our community, if we could just get it right at the economic level. We look at the riots that took place last October, and it really boiled down to economics. So they said, but we know it really boiled down to a certain level of consciousness.
Yeah,
because if you can have a belief, or even some people say it was a rumor, going around in your community, for example, a young black girl was raped at a particular shop by several Asian men, and then you say, okay, we're going to march, I'm going to make our feelings felt, rightly or wrongly. That is how most people felt. We're going to march and make our feelings felt and make our voices heard. Then the response of the Asians was, from what I see in my analysis, was, we're going to teach you a lesson. You're stepping out of line here. You're now boycotting our businesses. You're causing us to lose money, and we're going to deal with you, and we're going to show you who runs things. So they sent out their young men to come and attack us in our communities. And I was there out on the street, so no one can come and tell me that they didn't do that. They came out in full force. But a lot of us thought they came out just to fight us, just for the sake of fighting us. But for me, they came out to protect their economic interest. A young man, a young Rasta brother, Isaiah Young Sam, God bless his soul, he lost his life in those horrible riots of last October. Yet, within a week or two, after all of that happened, every black person, they were back in those shops.
Disgusting.
It was unbelievable. It became, but no one had a right to say that the girl was raped. There was no proof, there's no evidence, the girl hasn't come forward. No one thought, well, not to say nobody, for the vast majority, didn't think, well, even if it was a rumour, the fact is, these people are saying to us, you have no right to stop buying into our shops. We're going to discipline you. We're going to send our youths out. But we're back in the shops, man. And I think this is what Kente is saying. Without a certain level of consciousness, the economics may not just do it. It's important.
Yes, our economic weakness, it is a symptom of our unconsciousness. That's all it is.
Nigel?
It always baffles me that as a black person, and you're buying black hair products or black products, whatever, you're going to an Asian shop when there is another black retailer half a mile away.
Yeah, but you know what the sisters are going to say?
I don't care about
but
the
it's
10
cheaper.
pence. No,
it's cheaper at the Asian shop. It's cheaper.
Further than that, 10 pence is neither here nor there.
Sometimes it's as much as a £2 difference, you know.
We'll make the £2 difference, because you know what? At some point, we've got to help our own. And I know we're going to say we've heard that before, but we need to stop hearing it and doing it. Yeah, we've got other communities. The Chinese community, they're huge. They help their own. I've never been to a Chinese restaurant and seen anybody but Chinese people serving. Yeah, I've never been to an Asian restaurant where there's anybody but Asian people serving. Yeah, black restaurants, I'm sure I saw a white person behind Russell once.
Yeah, and Chinese inside there.
I'm saying, you know what, I ain't no racist, but you know what, let's help each other out first. Let's put our own people first. Yeah, why is it? I just don't understand it. You've got top of here, you got Cape Hill Market. Yeah, you got a black man round the corner in Cape Hill Market selling good quality food, but the first thing I see is black people going in Asian shops coming out with bagfuls. You got Pack Supermarket up there, pure blackheads in there, pure black people in there. Yeah, just go a few steps further. We need to make we need to take a responsibility for each other's wealth, right? It's about generating wealth. It's not about making money. Individually, money to us, yeah. We in the black community have a problem with money, yeah. We think it's going out of fashion. We spend it frivolously, yeah. We spend it on these worthless Western trinkets. You know what I mean? 24 karat gold dangly thing around your neck, BMW 2-litre turbocharged trinkets, and unfortunately our psychology is that these are trinkets of success. That's not success. It's because we've been bought into this capitalist ideology, which isn't ours anyway. Yeah,
but it doesn't go back to what Kente is saying. Our economic position is symptomatic of the level of consciousness.
Definitely, but you know what? I don't see it as a big step from getting from that point of unconsciousness to the point of starting to think about your fellow black person. It's not a big step.
Do you know
it's not a big step to go.
Nigel? I'm gonna disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. Because anywhere you go in the black world, it's the same situation. More or less, we're not supporting each other business-wise. Probably heard your mum say it, or your auntie, or some elder. Or black people don't unite, black people don't stick together. So they know they should be doing it. We know there's no ifs or buts. We know we should be doing it. There is something in our psyche, in our consciousness, that prevents us from making that hurdle. That is, whether you want to say that hurdle is self-hatred, or that hurdle is all of the lies we've been told about ourselves, but there's something in our psyche.
Just ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously a conscious pro-African sister, and our fellow guests here, obviously conscious African men. How did you make the step to realizing that you need to support your own, that you need to be a positive model for your society, your community, your people? What made you make the step?
For me, it's a desire, it's a passion inside of me. But more than that, it's what I believe I'm here to do. The education process that I've gone through, and I don't mean academically, in terms of self-knowledge, a lot of people haven't gone through that process. And I'm not saying I've gone to the top. I've got a long way to go. As long as I'm on this earth, walking and breathing, I've got a lot of learning to do. But I'm very clear about who I am as an African woman. Now, I was lucky in the sense that my dad was a black conscious man to a certain degree. And he was always pushing certain things to me and questioning me and challenging me. So that gave me a head start. I've always knew something wasn't right. I always wanted to seek answers to the predicaments that we were facing as black people. Then you travel and you see things and you think, hold on, this is really serious. Then you meet other people who are on the path of questioning just like yourself. You begin to share information. You begin to read books. You do some inner thinking and you begin to really reason within yourself. It's not just black and white. It's a long process. It has been a long process for me. And so, like I say, not everyone's would have made that journey that I would have made, and I've still got a long way to go.
I mean, what the sister is saying is vital. I mean, in my own case, I started to look around. It was the war in Zimbabwe when I started to look and say, why is, Europeans killing Africans? I asked my parents, why is, white people killing black people? And I think that's just the beginning of the journey. Now, when you start to learn some of these things, you start to look around. I call it self-realization or just realization. These things, when we talk about economics before, we talk about, the mental or philosophical outlook. These things are supposed to be a natural part of any human being. You're supposed to look after yourself. You're supposed to cater for your well-being. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Now, people also look around and get this kind of realization. This thing's supposed to be naturally passed to children. We're supposed to teach our children these things, show them what they can become. This would be a natural state of being, but with our people, it's not a natural state of being. So we have to think about a thing that our people, or the elder people, older people, we're supposed to naturally be passing these things on, because they're not going to teach you in school. It's against their interest to start teaching you these kind of things in school. So it's our duty. This is our duty, bound to do these kind of things.
And it's a massive re-education process that we have to go through, because when you think about it, it serves somebody why we should be like this. There's a reason why we're like this. Somebody benefits from our being like this, whether it's us as blacks in the West, and Europeans benefit from our behaviour, our lack of consciousness about who we are as Africans and who we are as spiritual beings, or whether it's the Arabs.
I was speaking to the brother Nigel that many people in Africa do not realize that Africans were living in North Africa. They believe, as they've been told, that the Sahara Desert was a barrier between Africans in the South and North Africa. They believe this simply because they do not know how old the desert is. In their understanding, the desert have always been separating the North from the South. So they cannot see how Africans could have been living in North Africa. And this whole idea of a sub-Saharan African and African south of the Sahara is a further perpetuation of that lie. Not only that, they don't even realize that you can travel from South Africa to North Africa without going across the desert. So they believe that the desert is a barrier between the north and the south of the continent. So when you don't know, when you lack certain knowledge, you can easily be deceived. If you simply know when the Sahara was formed, no one can tell you that Africans were not living in North Africa. Not only that, the Africans who left Africa and migrated went north. So how did they reach the north if there was a desert? That means there was no desert when Africans were traveling north to populate Europe and other parts of Asia. So if you don't know basic, I've spoken to people, these are university graduates in Africa, and I asked them simple questions, and they said they don't know.
Questions like what?
I said to them, for example, do you know about King Nama? For example, never heard about King Nama. And I said that there are certain things that every African should learn on the first day at school that you, a PhD, don't know about. And when you go to explain what education means, they tell them I'm not educated. They say, no, I'm not educated. When you explain the actual root of the word education to them, then they realize they're not educated.
Could you please explain it to our listeners?
Alright, the word education, they say, come from the word edu, E-D-U-C-E-R-E, educare, or educe. So education means to draw out from inside, right? So to be educated is to draw out what is inside of you, not to put in something into you. And it also says to draw out from a set of data. That means a teacher don't put into the student, the teacher take out from the student or develop the student. So you find that most of us who are educated are far from educated, because no one have taken out what is inside of us and develop it. They have put in something into us, and that is the opposite of education. In the same way that when a lion educate the cubs, they simply pull out the instinct of the cubs, the hunting instinct, the reflex. So to educate someone is to pull out what is inside of them and develop it for them to serve their people and themselves. So when you put something into someone, you're not educated. So if you're educated and you don't have your own name, you're not educated. Because even to be educated should tell you that you're supposed to have your own name. If you're educated, you will not have someone else's religion. Because to have someone else's religion is for them to put that into you. That is why they convert you. You cannot be converted and be educated. You cannot be converted and educated at the same time. So an educated person will know their history, they will know their culture, and they will know their traditions. As long as you don't know that, you cannot be educated. An educated person will know the enemies from friends. You cannot be educated and don't know the Arabs are not your enemy. It doesn't make any sense. Because the first thing in nature is to know your enemy. Even animals, the first thing a young zebra or antelope have to learn is not what to eat, but how to escape the lion. So if you don't know who your enemy is, then you're not educated.
Nigel, as a school teacher, would you agree with Kente's definition of education?
It's an interesting concept, and to some extent I agree with what he's saying, that obviously a lot of teachers feel, as I was pointing out, that children are an empty vessel and they're there to be filled up, but the better teachers recognize what's in the child and develops that and makes that potential that's in the child reach its apex, which is the most that child, that individual can be. In terms of black children, I very much understand, because we have a system in Britain that doesn't, you know what I mean, it's not for black children. It's surprising because it suits Asian children substantially, because their natures are very placid nature. They can sit, listen and regurgitate. Black children can't sit, listen and regurgitate. You give an Asian child a textbook and say, read that, write out the questions and answer the questions, and it's done. Give a black child that, is not doing it.
Why?
Because he's read it, yeah, he's verbalized the questions and answered them in his head, yeah, and he now wants to expand on that.
Take it deeper.
He wants to take it deeper. You see, black children are brilliant at science. Give a black child an experiment to do. Watch out, move out the way, because he's taking it beyond what the remits you've given. He's taking it beyond the boundaries. Yeah, he's exploring. He's coming up with his own hypothesis. You know what I mean? His own understanding. Yeah, black children brilliant at science, brilliant at mathematics. It's the manner you teach these subjects in. This is why you hear this endless cycle of black boys not achieving. Black boys will not achieve in the British system for a number of reasons, and one of the reasons is the teaching techniques. It don't suit us. We're not placid people. We're not sit down, be quiet, copy off the blackboard, put in your exercise book and shut up. We want to learn. Yeah, we want to experience. We want to explore. Yeah, this is how we understand our environment. We're people that make natural links. In Britain, you have a system where you teach maths and you teach English and you teach biology as discrete disciplines. Yeah, to me that's not how education should be. You should understand that effect, that if you learn something about, I don't know, a place, a geographical position, you know how that then affects its culture, which is then its religion, which is then its society. Yeah, so you learn it as an entity altogether instead of distinct subjects. Do you know what I mean? And then where you see that actually coming back into education, yeah, we're now saying, okay, we don't need to teach them English as sit down and learn how to put a comma in the right place. Oh, come on, you must know your maths, yeah. We're now actually going back into a position where we're looking at the whole, and black children are successful when it's taught in that manner and when it's taught in an environment where they can investigate. You know what I mean? As Kenta talked about, you know what I mean, taking a question, giving them a question. Ask a black child a question, yeah, and they're off. It might not be the answer you're looking for, it might not be something you thought of, but it's an experience, it's an original thought.
Also as well, and I want to go back to what Kente was saying about the lack of education. When you saying you were talking to the students in Africa, up to the graduates, I want to touch back on that as well, so we don't deviate too much. What you guys are saying, Nigel, Kente, is very important. I was reading a book by Maladamas Somain. He's an African shaman, and he was talking about he was so shocked by Western education, because in Africa, education was the pull-out of the individual. And even in my study of ancient Egyptian spirituality, when you look at it, it's almost like our ancestors were saying to you, the universal blueprint is inside of you. You have the answers to everything inside of you. It's how your teacher, as Kente was saying, and yourself can tap into that, help you to tap into your own library, your own university within, and bring out of you the answers you need. What Europeans and Arabs have done is they come with systems already in place. It's amazing. They tell you that this is it, guys. This is the world. This is the universe in a book. This is it. And you then have to spend your life putting that book into you. And any natural intelligence you have, whether it's your curiosity or you want to question something or challenge something, you're told is wrong. That's the work of the devil. But that's your own natural blueprint checking that information that's going into you. But we're not taught like that. We're taught the opposite. In fact, everything that the Europeans teach us is the opposite of who we are naturally as Africans, is the opposite of the entire order of the universe.
And you know what? And if you asked or questioned, you'd be classified as being disruptive.
Well, I always was in school, but there you go. There you go. Very disruptive young girl, but who cares? I did well in the end, so they say. Kente, you got talking about the graduates in Africa. The uneducated graduates.
Well, they tell me they're not educated. When you explain what education really is, and they show them the dictionary, then they would say I'm not educated. They would tell you that they don't know. Basically, they've been removed from who they really are, which is opposite of being educated. And in fact, it's one of the most ignorant people you find is our university graduates, because whereas they a so-called unlearned can use common sense. For example, among certain so-called learned people, they will tell you about Hamite and Bantus and Nilotes and different types of African, whereas the so-called unlearned just see African. If you show an unlearned African a picture of an African, they will say that's African, whereas those who say they're educated will tell you that this one is a Hamite, that one is a Nilot, that one is a pygmy. So they can't even use their common sense in many ways. It has been washed out of them. And these are the people who are running. In fact, to be among them is sometimes embarrassment, because you're basically among unthinking robots at times, who believe everything they have been taught and have never questioned anything. And they're like walking dead. And you can see why the continent is the way it is with those people who are at the leadership positions.
Educated fools.
Miseducated fools.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up this show very shortly. I want each of you speak to our listeners out there. Give them something that they can do now that they've heard this 2.5 hour discussion, 3.5 hour discussion. Give them something that they could go and do, some task, something they can go and read, or something, or even some questions they could ask themselves to challenge themselves, something that they can go and do to learn whether it's more about this subject, to learn more about the African history, to learn more about themselves, to better the community, something that they can do.
One of the things all of us can do is to participate more in our children's schooling, and don't leave it to the school alone. Otherwise, we're going to end up losing the next generation. Every parent have to monitor what the child are learning in school, and also have to have input into giving that child the correct information, which they're not going to get in the schools and you're not going to get on the television. Because for many of us, it's already too late. Our future is really with the young, the next generation. So even though some of us maybe cannot save ourselves, we must make in the same way that our parents came to England. Many of them never went to school. Many of them can't read, in fact. But they still saw that if at least they can give us that opportunity, then things can improve. So likewise, some of us now who maybe are past the stage or might find it difficult to come around to certain understanding, at least try and save the next generation. That's the most we can do.
Do you think parents should give children a vision to go to school with? In the sense that when we were growing up, most of us, for the most part, we didn't have a vision as such. When you watch Asian children, there's something about them. They have a sense of purpose, a sense of vision, whereas we just want to be British, and that's it. What kind of a vision do you think parents, if we're gonna change our situation in Britain as black people and help to impact upon other black people around the world, what vision do our children need to be given so that they walk to school with it every day, they wake up with it every day, when they're in front of the teacher, they have that vision clear in their minds?
Well, ideally, that vision should be African liberation. That's without that, there's no purpose. If you're going to push a child to be a doctor, African liberation should be the motive behind it. Whatever we're going to do, it should be about African liberation. And that is the vision that we should try and instill into our children. Whatever you're going to do, make it be known that this is for the benefit of your people.
But most people don't see themselves as Africans, so do you mean black liberation?
Well,
is that the same thing? Is that what you're saying? The liberation of black people?
Well, black liberation. But see, at the end of the day, even the people who don't say they're Africans know they're Africans. Many who say they're not Africans do know they're Africans. So whatever word they want, with black liberation, African liberation, it doesn't really matter. But that should be the goal, because you're not going to expect some of us to say we're African.
Okay, but you're not just talking about the physical liberation of Africa, you mean the liberation of us as individuals, as a community, as families?
Yeah, mental and physical liberation.
And spiritual. All right, Nigel.
Just start to educate yourself. And as a book, it's not a heavy book, it's not a controversial book. It's a thought-provoking book, and it's by Paul Grant, and it's called Blue Skies for Africans, and it's a good read.
Yeah,
it's a good read because it introduces topics. And if you haven't read a book, like I know I've got good friends who haven't picked up a book in years, and I give them heavy textbook, and you're initially put off by the weight of this book is not in that league. It's a lovely introduction into who we are, where we are, and where we need to go. And I was speaking to Kente as well. Share your knowledge, share your understanding, talk to each other. I think you got a lot of black people that don't talk to each other about serious issues. We converse about entertainment, sports, so on, religion. And that's about it. We don't actually talk about our position. This is a beautiful medium. We've got this radio station, this program. It's wonderful, but we need to be talking about it to each other and sharing our understanding, sharing our knowledge, sharing our expectations and our strategies.
Omar Jack.
What the other speakers have said has been very constructive. I mean, what I would like to add to that is, in our ancient texts, there was a saying, know thyself. And I think all of us must endeavor to re-embrace ourselves. We're being put off track. I mean, if we want to go and teach the young people, we'll have to teach ourselves first. So we're duty bound to get the knowledge, learn about ourselves, learn about the wider universe, and pass the knowledge on to the generations to come. We must seek knowledge. It's very important. And there's many books produced by different authors. We must go take the children to the bookshops, buy them books, read ourselves, let them see you reading, because I don't think many parents really even show their children those kind of things. So I think open up our eyes. We can talk about the talk, but we have to be willing to do the work. So we have to show them, even through our behavior, that we ourselves are doing some of these things.
And lastly, what would you say to black Muslims out there who may have seen this show, that they've listened to the show, but they may have seen it as an attack on Islam? Anybody?
I love all my African brothers. So
And sisters.
And sisters, sorry. So, they shouldn't feel no way, because truth is truth. We must be willing to face up to whatever is out there.
Okay, Kente.
Well, to my understanding, we spent the past few hours defending Africa, not attacking anyone or anything. So if in the process of defending Africa, it seems that we're attacking Islam, well, there's nothing we can do about that.
Do you want to say anything, Nigel?
I just simply have to ditto that. Totally.
Okay.
Enough said.
Well, it's been great reasoning with you guys. And I know people are going to get a lot from this. Some serious, thought-provoking conversations. We want to say thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Yamanja. Yamanja, a window to Africa. Their shop is based at 446 Birchfield Road, Perry Bar, Birmingham. That's B23JG. So if you've heard us mention any books tonight and you think, how can I get hold of that book? Then by all means, email them at info@yamanjaonline.com. They've been great in supporting us with DVDs throughout Black History Month, giving us DVDs to give out to members of the public. We also want to say a big thank you to Junior Howell over there at the organisation called Race. Junior's been a great support. He's been helping us with the sponsorship as well, helping us to post out the DVDs, getting them printed up, etc. So thank you very much to Race. Remember, Race offers advice on social services, employment, health, the law. You can contact them on 0121 551 4605 551 4605, and they're based at Garvey House on Soho Road. So a big thank you to Junior Howell. Now, for those of you who may want to take your study of African history much further, you may want to know about, well, who are we as black people? Where do we come from? What have we contributed to the world? Well, this course, the Black Studies course, has just recently started down there at Malika House, 81 George Street, Lazals in B19. Excellent course, isn't it, Nigel?
It's fantastic.
Okay, excellent course indeed. It's every Sunday from 12 o'clock to 2 p.m. But let me just kind of show you some of the topics, some of the kind of studies that you'll be engaged in. It's 30 classes, and you have, for example, Class 1, Introduction to Black Studies. You have classes which look at the facts concerning the origin of humanity. You have classes looking at the ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians. You have classes on the origin of civilization, the Middle East, or is it East Africa? You have classes on the Negro civilizations on the Asian continent, Elam, Saba, and the Indus Valley. You also have classes on the North African civilizations of Carthage and Numidia. You also have a look at West African civilizations like ancient Ghana, Malay, and Songhai, and the East African civilizations like Kush, Aksum, and the Swahili. They also look at medieval Nubia before moving on to enslavement. And then you have classes which look at the introduction to the black political reality. You also have a look at the birth of radical sociology, classes on the family organization in the black community, black female relationships. You also have a look at Frantz Fanon on the birth of black psychology. You also have the developmental psychology of black children, the research findings of key black psychologists. You have a look at the black world contribution to science and technology. You also have classes on the tradition of ancient African art, such as the Sahara, Nok, Igbo, Yoruba, and Benin. You also have a look at the roots of black music. You also have a look at ancient and traditional religions of Africa. You also have classes on Judaism and the black world, Christianity and the black world, Islam, Buddhism and the Black World. And you also have classes on Rastafari, Nation of Islam, Kingism and Black Liberation Theory. And then of course the ultimate class, for me, certainly a class that really did it for me. I attended the vast majority of those classes, was how can we use Black Studies. Excellent, a real look at self-development and how you can incorporate these studies into your life. Alright, so there you go. I bet you never knew we had so much to discuss, so much to learn about. But it's certainly something you should consider doing. Of course, you should consider attending. If you'd like to, during every show, we normally, at the end of every show, we talk about various books that people should go out and read in relation to the topic that we've discussed. Well, normally we have one. For the extended reasoning section of this show, we have several. The first book we're going to recommend is Race First by Marcus Garvey. The book is actually put together and edited by Tony Martin, but it's Race First by Marcus Garvey. We also have a book called The Arab Invasion of Egypt by Butler. Very good book, The Arab Invasion of Egypt by Butler. We also have a book called Slavery in the History of Muslim Black Africa by Humphrey J. Fisher. Slavery in the History of Muslim Black Africa. Alright, and then the final book is Ronald Seagull, Islam's Black Slaves. Alright, okay, Kente's saying it's a very, very good book. Ronald Seagull, Islam's Black Slaves. So you can't say the information's out there, can't say you don't know how to get hold of the information. It's there. Several books for you to try. Race First, Arab Invasion of Egypt, Slavery in the History of Muslim Black Africa, or Islam's Black Slaves. Okay, it's been nice talking with the brothers in the studio, and you guys find this useful. It's the On Level Talk Show. I'm your host, Ankobia, dealing with issues that reflect you, issues that affect you, but most certainly challenging your thinking, challenging what you think you know. And I certainly think the brothers have done that tonight, and I want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you. Much love. Thank you.
Give thanks.